She thought the kiss was a dream come true. It wasn't. The man she'd loved in silence for years had never touched her. But someone else had. Someone dangerous. Someone who'd been watching her long before she ever knew his name. Now as the kingdom tears itself apart, and she's left drowning in a river meant to be her grave, Arden Vale is about to learn the hardest truth of all. Sometimes the person who saves you is the one you never saw coming. This is a story of betrayal, survival, and a love so brutal it starts a war. Stay until the end. Hit that like button. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story reaches. Now let's go back to where it all began. Arden Vale had spent most of her life being invisible. Not in the literal sense. She still took up space, still moved through the world like anyone else. But in the way that mattered, the way people saw her, she might as well have been a shadow. In a kingdom where your wolf defined everything, your strength, your rank, your worth, Arden had nothing, no shift, no instinct, no power, just silence. She stood at the edge of the training yard now, arms crossed, watching the others spar. Dust rose in lazy clouds under their boots. The sound of fists meeting flesh, the sharp bark of laughter, the low growl of dominance. It was all so familiar it barely registered anymore. "Move faster, Kale," someone shouted. "You call that a block?" Arden's gaze drifted across the fighters, landing, like it always did, on him. Prince Dorian Ashford, golden hair, sharp jaw. The kind of smile that made you forget he was dangerous. He moved through the sparring ring like he owned it, which, technically, he did. Second son of the late king, heir apparent now that his older brother had taken the throne. Dorian was everything the kingdom wanted in a leader. Charming, strong, effortlessly confident, and completely unaware she existed. Arden had been in love with him since she was 15. It was the kind of love that didn't ask for much. Just a glance, a word, maybe someday a conversation that lasted longer than 10 seconds. She didn't expect him to choose her. She wasn't stupid. But hope was a stubborn thing, and it had dug its claws into her chest years ago and refused to let go. Still staring at him? Arden flinched. She turned to find Mira standing beside her, arms folded, one brow raised in judgment. Mira was her only real friend here, though friend was a generous term, more like someone who tolerated her presence because they'd grown up in the same part of the estate. "I wasn't staring," Arden muttered. "You're always staring." Mira's voice was flat, unimpressed. "You know he doesn't see you, right?" "I know." "Then why do you keep doing this to yourself?" Arden didn't answer. What was she supposed to say? That hope didn't care about logic? That sometimes the heart was just cruel enough to keep beating for someone who would never beat back? She looked away, jaw tight. Mira sighed. "You're wasting your time. Dorian's going to pick someone with status, someone strong. Not me. I know." The words came out sharper than she meant them to. Mira gave her a look, half pity, half frustration, but didn't push. She never did. That was the thing about Mira. She'd tell you the truth, but she wouldn't force you to swallow it. "I'm just saying," Mira said quietly. "You deserve better than watching him from the sidelines." Arden's throat tightened. She nodded once, not trusting herself to speak. Mira squeezed her shoulder, then walked off toward the main hall. Arden stayed where she was, rooted in place, eyes drifting back to the ring. Dorian had just pinned someone to the ground. He laughed, easy and bright, then hauled the guy up with one hand. The crowd around him cheered. Arden's chest ached. She turned and walked away before anyone noticed she'd been there at all. The estate was massive. Too massive, really, for the number of people who actually lived there. It had belonged to the royal family for generations, a sprawling stone fortress nestled at the edge of the capital. Arden had been born here, raised here, though she'd never quite belonged. Her mother had been a low-ranking wolf, her father unknown. She'd grown up in the servant quarters, doing small jobs, running errands, blending into the background. When other kids shifted for the first time, she'd waited, and waited, and waited. It never came. By the time she turned 18, the truth was undeniable. She was wolfless, broken, useless. Most people ignored her after that. A few pitied her, some mocked her outright. Dorian had never done either. He just didn't see her. And somehow, that was worse. Arden made her way through the east wing now, her boots quiet on the stone floor. The halls were empty this time of day. Most people were outside or in the great hall preparing for tonight's dinner. She liked it better this way. Quiet. Alone. She turned a corner and nearly walked straight into someone. "Oh, sorry, The words died in her throat. King Riven Ashford stood in front of her, still as stone, his dark eyes fixed on hers. Arden's heart slammed against her ribs. She took a step back, instinct kicking in even though he hadn't moved. Riven was tall, taller than Dorian, broader in the shoulders, with a presence that filled the space around him like gravity. His hair was black, slightly too long, and his expression was unreadable in that way that made people nervous. He was the oldest son, the one who'd taken the throne after their father's death 2 years ago, the one everyone respected and no one really knew, and he was staring at her. "Your Majesty," Arden said quickly, dropping her gaze. "I'm sorry, I didn't see—" "It's fine." His voice was low, rough around the edges. Not unkind, just distant. Arden nodded, still not looking at him. Arden. She froze. He knew her name. Her eyes flicked up to his, confusion written all over her face. Riven's expression didn't change, but something in his gaze softened, just barely, just enough to notice if you were paying attention. "You don't have to apologize every time you take up space," he said. The words hit her harder than they should have. She didn't know what to say. Didn't know if he expected her to say anything at all. Riven's jaw tightened slightly, like he was fighting something internal. Then he stepped aside, clearing the path. "Go," he said quietly. Arden didn't need to be told twice. She slipped past him, heart pounding, and didn't look back. That night, the great hall was full. Long tables stretched from one end of the room to the other, packed with wolves from across the kingdom. Candles flickered in iron sconces along the walls, casting uneven shadows over the crowd. The air smelled like roasted meat and wine, and too many bodies pressed into one space. Arden sat near the back, tucked between two women she barely knew. She kept her head down, picking at the food on her plate. No one spoke to her. No one ever did. At the front of the hall, Riven sat at the head table, his expression as unreadable as ever. Dorian sat beside him, laughing at something one of the council members said. He looked so at ease, so perfect. Arden's chest twisted. "Did you hear?" The voice came from her left. One of the women, Elara, maybe? Arden couldn't remember, leaned in, whispering to the girl beside her. "Hear what?" the other one asked. "Dorian's finally going to choose someone." Arden's fork stilled. "About time," the second woman said. "Who do you think it'll be?" "Probably Leora. She's been circling him for months. Or Sarah. She's got the bloodline for it." They both laughed, light and careless, like it was nothing, like it didn't matter. Arden's throat went dry. She set her fork down carefully, her hands shaking just enough that she had to press them flat against the table to stop it. Of course he was going to choose someone. Of course it wasn't going to be her. She stood abruptly, the movement drawing a few glances, but no one said anything. She walked out of the hall, heart pounding, vision blurring at the edges. The cold air hit her the moment she stepped outside. She sucked in a breath, pressing her back against the stone wall, eyes squeezed shut. Stop it. Stop hoping. Stop waiting for something that's never going to happen. But the ache in her chest didn't listen. Footsteps echoed nearby. Arden opened her eyes, expecting to see Mira, or maybe one of the guards. It was Dorian. He was walking across the courtyard, alone, hands in his pockets. He hadn't seen her yet. She could slip back inside, disappear, avoid the inevitable awkwardness of him not recognizing her, but she didn't move. And then, like something out of a dream, he turned. Their eyes met. Dorian slowed, then stopped. A faint smile tugged at his lips. "Hey," he said. Arden's heart nearly stopped. "Hi." He walked closer, casual, easy. "You left early." Yeah, needed air." "Fair." He glanced back at the hall, then at her. "It's a lot in there." She nodded, not trusting herself to say more. Dorian studied her for a moment, something unreadable flickering across his face. Then he smiled again, brighter this time, like he'd just decided something. "You're Arden, right?" Her breath caught. "Yeah." "I thought so." He tilted his head. "We should talk more. You're different. Different. The word hung in the air between them, and Arden didn't know if it was a compliment or an observation or something else entirely. But it didn't matter, because for the first time in years, Dorian Ashford was looking at her. And that was enough. The next few days were strange. Dorian didn't seek her out, but he didn't ignore her either. He'd nod when they passed in the halls, smile if their eyes met across the courtyard. Once, he even stopped to ask how her day was going. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd ever had. Arden started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, things were changing. And then the rumors started. Did you hear? Dorian's planning something. Some kind of game, a test. For who? For her. Arden didn't know who her was, but the way people whispered, the way they glanced in her direction when they thought she wasn't looking, it made her stomach twist. Mira cornered her one afternoon in the library, face tight with worry. You need to be careful, Mira said. Of what? Of him. Mira lowered her voice. Dorian doesn't do anything without a reason. If he's paying attention to you now, it's because he wants something. You don't know that. I know him better than you do. Arden's jaw tightened. Maybe you're wrong. Mira stared at her for a long moment, then shook her head. Just don't get your hopes up, please. But it was too late for that. The invitation came 3 days later. A folded piece of parchment slipped under her door in the middle of the night. Arden found it in the morning, her name written in elegant script across the front. Her hand shook as she unfolded it. Meet me in the East Garden tonight. Midnight. Come alone. D. Her heart slammed against her ribs. This was it. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. She told herself to be smart, to think it through, to ask Mira what she thought. But she didn't, because hope was louder than reason. And at midnight, Arden Vale walked into the East Garden alone. The garden was silent. Moonlight filtered through the trees, casting silver patterns across the stone path. Arden's breath came in short, shallow bursts as she moved deeper into the shadows, searching. Dorian? She called softly. No answer. She stepped forward, pulse racing, and then she saw it. A figure standing near the fountain at the center of the garden. Tall, broad-shouldered, waiting. Her heart leapt. Dorian? Close your eyes. The voice was low, rough. Not Dorian's. Arden froze. Who? Close your eyes, Arden. Her name on his lips sent a shiver down her spine. She didn't recognize the voice, didn't understand what was happening, but something in her, some deep, irrational part, listened. She closed her eyes. Footsteps. Closer now. She could feel him in front of her, could feel the heat radiating off his body. Why? Don't speak. A hand touched her jaw, gentle, careful. Her breath hitched, and then he kissed her. It wasn't soft, it wasn't sweet. It was desperate, raw. Like he'd been holding it back for too long and couldn't anymore. Arden's knees nearly buckled. Her hands found his chest, fingers curling into fabric, and she kissed him back, harder than she meant to, deeper than she should have. This was real. This was happening. When he finally pulled away, her eyes were still closed, her chest heaving. Dorian, go, the voice said, rougher now, almost pained. Go, Arden, now. She opened her eyes, but the garden was empty, and the man, whoever he was gone. Arden didn't sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the kiss over and over until it felt like a dream she'd imagined. But the heat of it still lingered on her lips, the weight of his hands on her face, the way he'd said her name, low, rough, like it hurt him to say it. Dorian. It had to be him. Who else would it be? Her chest ached with something she couldn't name. Hope, maybe. Or fear. Or both tangled together so tightly she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. When dawn broke, she got up, splashed cold water on her face, and tried to pull herself together. Her reflection in the cracked mirror looked pale, wide-eyed, like someone who'd just stepped off the edge of a cliff and hadn't hit the ground yet. She needed to see him, needed to know if it was real. But when she made her way to the training yard that morning, Dorian wasn't there. He left early, one of the guards told her when she asked. Went hunting with his brother. Arden's stomach sank. The king? Yeah. Won't be back till tonight, probably. She nodded, throat tight, and walked away before the guard could see her face. It was fine. She could wait. She'd waited this long. But the day stretched out like an open wound, every hour dragging slower than the last. She tried to distract herself, helped Mira fold linens in the laundry, scrubbed floors in the West Wing, anything to keep her hands busy. But her mind kept drifting back to the garden, to the kiss, to the voice that had said her name like a secret. By the time the sun set, her nerves were frayed to nothing. She was sitting in the courtyard when she heard the horses. Her head snapped up. 2 riders were approaching from the north gate, moving fast. Even from a distance, she recognized them. Riven and Dorian. They dismounted near the stables, both covered in dust and sweat. Riven's expression was unreadable as always, his dark eyes scanning the courtyard like he was taking inventory. Dorian, by contrast, was laughing, loud and easy, clapping his brother on the shoulder. Next time, I'm picking the route, Dorian said. Riven didn't respond. He just turned and walked toward the main hall, shoulders tight. Dorian watched him go, then shook his head, still grinning. His gaze swept across the courtyard and landed on Arden. Her breath caught. He smiled. Not the polite, distant smile he gave everyone. Something sharper. Something that made her pulse kick up. He started toward her. Arden stood, heart hammering, trying to look calm even though her hands were shaking. Hey, Dorian said when he reached her. Hi. He tilted his head, studying her like he was trying to figure something out. You look nervous. I'm not. You sure? His smile widened. You're doing that thing where you won't look at me. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I'm looking at you. Now you are. He leaned in slightly, voice dropping. Were you waiting for me? Her face burned. No, I was just... You were. He sounded pleased. That's cute. Arden didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know if she was supposed to feel flattered or humiliated or something else entirely. Dorian's gaze flicked over her shoulder, then back to her. Walk with me. It wasn't a question. He turned and started walking, and Arden, helpless, hopeful, stupid, followed. They ended up near the old stone bridge that stretched over the river at the edge of the estate. The water below was dark and fast, swollen from the recent rains. Dorian leaned against the railing, arms crossed, looking out at the trees on the far bank. Arden stood a few feet away, hands clasped in front of her, waiting. You know what people say about you? Dorian asked suddenly. Her stomach dropped. What? That you're wolfless. He glanced at her. That you don't belong here. The words hit like a slap. Arden's throat tightened, but she forced herself to stay steady. I know what they say. Doesn't bother you? It bothers me every day. Dorian's expression shifted, something softer, almost curious. Then why stay? Because I don't have anywhere else to go. He was quiet for a moment, still watching her. Then he pushed off the railing and stepped closer. I don't think you're weak. Her breath hitched. You don't? No? His voice dropped low and smooth. I think you're different, and different can be interesting. Arden's heart was pounding so hard she thought he might hear it. Dorian! Last night, he said, cutting her off. In the garden. Everything stopped. She stared at him, frozen, not breathing. Dorian's lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. You felt it, didn't you? Yes. Good. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was light, deliberate. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Arden's knees almost buckled. This was real. This was happening. Dorian was standing here, touching her, looking at her like she mattered. I didn't think you'd come, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Why not? Because you never noticed me before. His smile faded slightly. I noticed. Then why didn't you say anything? I wasn't ready. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him. But I am now. Arden's breath was shallow, uneven. What does that mean? Dorian's eyes searched hers, and for a moment she thought he was going to kiss her again. But he didn't. He just held her gaze, something unreadable flickering across his face. It means, he said quietly, you're mine now. The word should have thrilled her, should have made her feel wanted, chosen, seen. But something about the way he said it, like a claim, not a question, made her chest tighten. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed from the path behind them. Dorian stepped back smoothly, his expression shifting into something casual, easy. Arden turned to see Mira approaching, her face tight with worry. There you are, Mira said, not even glancing at Dorian. I've been looking for you. I'm fine, Arden said. We need to talk. Mira's tone left no room for argument. Dorian raised an eyebrow. I'll see you later, Arden. He walked past Mira without another word, hands in his pockets, whistling softly. The moment he was gone, Mira grabbed Arden's arm. What the hell are you doing? What? You know what? Mira's voice was low, sharp. Dorian. What's going on? Arden pulled her arm free. Nothing. We were just talking. That wasn't just talking. He was all over you. He wasn't... Arden, listen to me. Mira's eyes were wide, frantic. Dorian doesn't do anything without a reason. If he's suddenly interested in you, it's because he wants something. And I don't think it's what you think it is. Arden's chest tightened. You don't know that. I know him better than you do. I grew up here. I've seen how he operates. Then maybe you're wrong about him. Mira stared at her, something like pity crossing her face. He's using you, Arden. I don't know why yet, but he is. No. Arden's voice cracked. You're wrong. He kissed me, Mira, last night, in the garden. Mira went still. What? He asked me to meet him, and he kissed me. It was real. Mira's face drained of color. Are you sure it was him? Who else would it be? Mira didn't answer, but the look on her face, horrified, sick, made Arden's stomach twist. What? Arden demanded. What is it? I heard something, Mira said slowly. A rumor. That Dorian made a bet. A bet? With some of the other wolves. About you. Mira's voice was barely audible now. About how long it would take him to make you fall for him. The world tilted. Arden took a step back, shaking her head. No, that's not... I don't know if it's true, Mira said quickly. But Arden, you need to be careful. Please. Arden's throat was too tight to speak. She turned and walked away, ignoring Mira's calls, ignoring the ache in her chest that felt like it was going to crack her ribs apart. It wasn't true. It couldn't be true. Dorian wouldn't do that. But the doubt crept in anyway. Over the next few days, Arden watched him, really watched him, the way he smiled when people were looking, the way he laughed with his friends, easy and careless, the way he'd glance at her across the courtyard just long enough to make her heart skip, then look away like it meant nothing. And she started to wonder, was this real? Or was it a game? She wanted to ask him outright, but every time she got close, the words died in her throat, because part of her, most of her, didn't want to know the answer. It was easier to believe the lie. The Royal Council meeting was scheduled for midweek, and the entire estate was buzzing with tension. Something big was happening. Arden didn't know what, but she could feel it in the air. Wolves moved through the halls in tight clusters, whispering, glancing over their shoulders. She was carrying a stack of folded linens to the west wing when she heard voices coming from one of the side rooms. Can't be serious? I am serious. It's perfect. Arden slowed. That was Dorian's voice. It's cruel, someone else said. A woman. Even for you. It's not cruel, it's smart. Dorian sounded amused. She'll never see it coming. Arden's chest went cold. And if she finds out? The woman asked. She won't. She's too desperate to question it. Laughter, low and sharp. Arden's hands tightened on the linens. She should walk away, should pretend she hadn't heard. But she didn't move. You really think this will work? The woman asked. I know it will. She's already halfway in love with me. All I have to do is play the part a little longer, and she'll do whatever I want. And then what? Then I prove my point. Dorian's voice was light, careless. that anyone can be manipulated if you know what they want. Arden's knees buckled. She grabbed the wall to steady herself, the linens tumbling to the floor. The voices inside the room went silent. "Did you hear something?" the woman asked. Footsteps. Arden turned and ran. She didn't stop until she reached her room. She slammed the door shut, chest heaving, and sank to the floor. It was true. All of it was true. Dorian had never wanted her. He'd never seen her. It was all a game, a bet, a joke. And she'd believed it. Her hands shook as she pressed them to her face, trying to breathe, trying not to fall apart. But the tears came anyway. Hot and furious and so full of shame, she thought she might choke on them. She'd been so stupid, so desperate, so pathetic. A knock at the door made her freeze. "Arden?" Mira's voice. Arden didn't answer. "Arden, open the door, please. Go away. I'm not going anywhere." Mira's tone was firm. "Let me in." Arden didn't have the energy to fight. She stood, wiped her face roughly, and opened the door. Mira took one look at her and stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "What happened?" "You were right." Arden's voice was hollow. "About Dorian. About everything." Mira's face darkened. "What did he do?" "It was a bet." Arden's laugh was bitter, broken. "The whole thing, the kiss, the attention, all of it, he was just proving a point." Mira swore under her breath. "I'm going to kill him." "Don't." Arden shook her head. "It doesn't matter." "Of course it matters." "No, it doesn't." Arden's voice was flat now, empty. "Because I'm done. I'm done hoping. I'm done waiting. I'm done pretending I belong here." Mira's eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I should leave." "Arden, why shouldn't I? What's keeping me here? A job I hate? People who despise me? A man who thinks I'm a joke?" "You can't just watch me." But even as she said it, Arden knew she wouldn't. Because as much as she hated this place, as much as it had broken her, she didn't know how to leave. Didn't know where she'd go or who she'd be without it. So she stayed. And she hated herself for it. Well, the next morning, Arden woke to find another note under her door. Her heart sank. She almost didn't open it, almost threw it in the fire and pretended it didn't exist. But her hands moved before her brain could stop them. The handwriting was different this time, sharper, less elegant. "You deserve better than this. Meet me at the North Tower, tonight, alone." Arden stared at the letter, pulse pounding. R, not DR, Riven. The king. Her stomach twisted. This didn't make sense. Why would Riven... And then it hit her. The garden. The kiss. The voice that had been too rough, too low. It hadn't been Dorian. It had been Riven. The realization hit her like a blow to the chest. She sat down hard on the edge of her bed, hands shaking, mind racing. Riven had kissed her. Riven had held her face in his hands and kissed her like he was drowning. And she'd thought it was Dorian. Her throat tightened. She didn't know what this meant, didn't know if it changed anything. But tonight, she was going to find out. The North Tower was old, older than the main estate, built back when the kingdom was at war and defense mattered more than beauty. Arden climbed the narrow stone stairs, her breath coming in short bursts, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. When she reached the top, Riven was already there. He stood near the edge, hands braced on the stone railing, looking out at the darkened landscape. He didn't turn when she approached, but she knew he'd heard her. "You came," he said quietly. "You knew I would." "I hoped." Arden stopped a few feet away, arms crossed, trying to hold herself together. "It was you." In the garden, Riven's shoulders tensed. "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you thought it was him." His voice was rough, strained, "and I didn't want to take that from you." Arden's chest ached. "Why did you kiss me?" Riven finally turned to face her. His eyes were dark, intense, full of something she couldn't name. "Because I've wanted to for years." The air left her lungs. "I've watched you," Riven continued, his voice low. "Every day, every moment you thought no one was looking, and I've wanted you every single time." Arden shook her head, struggling to process. "That doesn't make sense. You're the king. You could have anyone." I don't want anyone. He stepped closer, and she could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands were clenched at his sides. I want you. Why? Because you're real. His voice cracked slightly. Because you don't pretend to be something you're not. Because you're stronger than anyone in this damn kingdom, and you don't even see it. Tears burned at the back of Arden's eyes. Dorian doesn't think so. Riven's expression darkened. Dorian's a fool. He's your brother. That doesn't make him any less of a fool. Riven's gaze held hers, fierce and steady. What he's doing to you, it's wrong. And if I could stop it without destroying you in the process, I would. Then why don't you? Because you wouldn't believe me. His voice was raw now, painful. You'd think I was lying, that I had some ulterior motive, and I can't… He broke off, jaw tight. I can't risk you hating me more than you already do. I don't hate you. You should. Riven's laugh was bitter. I kissed you under false pretenses, let you think it was someone else. That's not… I'm glad it was you. The words came out before Arden could stop them. Riven went still. What? I said I'm glad. Her voice shook, but she didn't look away. Because that kiss, it felt real. And nothing with Dorian ever did. Something broke in Riven's expression. He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands framing her face, his forehead pressing against hers. Don't go back to him, he whispered. Please, don't let him destroy you. I won't, Arden said. I can't, not anymore. Riven's thumb brushed across her cheek, gentle and careful. Then stay here, with me. People will talk. Let them. They'll say I don't belong. You belong wherever you choose to be. His voice was fierce now, almost desperate. And I'm choosing you, Arden, if you'll let me. Arden's breath hitched. She wanted to say yes, wanted to fall into this, into him, and let the rest of the world burn. But fear held her back. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Neither do I. Riven's lips curved into the faintest smile. But we'll figure it out. And then he kissed her. Not like the first time, not desperate or hidden. This was slow, deliberate, like he was memorizing the shape of her mouth, the way she tasted, the sound she made when his hand slid into her hair. When they finally pulled apart, Arden was trembling. What happens now? She asked. Riven's jaw tightened. Now I make sure Dorian never touches you again. Awesome. But Dorian had other plans. The next day he cornered her in the library, his smile sharp and predatory. There you are, he said. I've been looking for you. Arden's stomach twisted. She tried to step around him, but he blocked her path. We need to talk, Dorian said. No, we don't. I think we do. His eyes glittered. I heard something interesting about you and my brother. Arden's blood went cold. Is it true? Dorian leaned in, voice dropping. Did Riven kiss you? She didn't answer. Dorian's smile widened. He did, didn't he? That's perfect. Leave me alone, Dorian. Why? Because you finally figured out I was playing you? He laughed. You should be thanking me, Arden. I gave you what you wanted. Attention. Someone who saw you. It's not my fault you couldn't tell it was fake. Her hands curled into fists. You're pathetic. Maybe. Dorian's expression didn't change. But at least I'm not desperate. The words hit like a blade. Arden shoved past him, heart pounding, vision blurring. Behind her, Dorian called out, This isn't over, Arden, not by a long shot. And she knew, deep in her bones, that he was right. Arden didn't see Dorian for 3 days after that, but she felt him everywhere, in the whispers that followed her through the halls, in the way people stopped talking when she walked into a room, in the sharp, assessing looks from wolves who'd never bothered to notice her before. Something had shifted. The air in the estate felt thicker, charged with a tension she couldn't name, and at the center of it all was Dorian, pulling strings she couldn't see, orchestrating something she didn't understand yet. Mira tried to warn her. Stay away from the East Wing, she said one morning, grabbing Arden's arm as they crossed the courtyard. And don't go anywhere alone. Why? What's happening? I don't know, but people are talking. About you. About Riven. Mira's face was tight with worry. Dorian's spreading rumors, saying you're trying to manipulate the king, that you're using him to climb above your station. Arden's stomach twisted. That's not true. I know it's not, but they don't. Mira glanced around, lowering her voice. Some of them are angry, Arden. Really angry. They think you're disrespecting the throne, that you're making a mockery of the crown by even being near Riven. I haven't done anything. It doesn't matter what you've done. It matters what they believe. Mira squeezed her arm. Just be careful, please. Arden nodded, throat tight, and tried to push the fear down. But it didn't work. Because that night, when she returned to her room, she found her door hanging open. Her breath caught. She stepped inside slowly, pulse racing. The room had been ransacked. Her belongings were scattered across the floor, clothes torn, books ripped apart, the small wooden box her mother had left her smashed to pieces. And on the wall above her bed, written in something dark and thick, were 2 words. Know your place. Arden's hand shook. She backed out of the room, heart pounding, and ran. She found Riven in the council chamber, surrounded by advisors. He was listening to someone speak, his expression unreadable, but the moment he saw her in the doorway, everything stopped. He stood. Leave us. The advisors exchanged glances but didn't argue. They filed out one by one, and the heavy door swung shut behind them. Riven crossed the room in 3 strides. What happened? Arden tried to speak, but the words stuck in her throat. She just shook her head, chest heaving. Riven's hands found her shoulders, steadying her. Arden, talk to me. My room, she managed. Someone... They destroyed everything. His jaw clenched. Show me. Riven's face was stone when he saw the message on the wall. He stood in the center of Arden's ruined room, hands curled into fists, breathing slow and controlled, but she could see the fury radiating off him in waves. Do you know who did this? He asked, voice low. No. Guess. Arden swallowed hard. It could be anyone. Half the estate hates me. This wasn't random. Riven turned to face her, eyes blazing. This was a message, and I know exactly who sent it. Dorian. Or someone loyal to him. Riven's voice was ice. Either way, it ends tonight. Riven, don't what? Let them terrorize you? Let them destroy your things and threaten you in your own home? He stepped closer, and she could see the rawness in his expression. I won't stand by and watch them break you. You can't start a war over me. I'm not starting anything. They did. His hands found her face, gentle despite the anger in his voice. You're mine, Arden, and I protect what's mine. The word should have scared her, should have felt like ownership, like another cage. But they didn't. They felt like safety. What are you going to do? She asked. Riven's jaw tightened. Whatever I have to. The confrontation happened the next morning. Arden was in the kitchens helping prepare breakfast when she heard the shouting. She dropped the knife she'd been using and ran toward the noise, her heart in her throat. The great hall was packed. Wolves lined the walls, voices raised, anger thick in the air. At the center of it all stood Riven and Dorian, facing each other like opponents in a ring. You're out of line, Dorian said, voice sharp. I'm out of line? Riven's laugh was cold. You sent people to her room. You had them destroy her things. You terrorized her. I didn't do anything. Don't lie to me. Riven stepped closer, and the crowd went silent. I know you, Dorian. I know how you operate. And I'm telling you now, if you go near her again, if you even look at her wrong, I will end you. Dorian's smile was slow, dangerous. You'd threaten your own brother over a wolfless girl? She's not just a girl, and you know it. What I know, Dorian said, voice rising, is that you're making a fool of yourself, of this family, of the crown. He turned to the crowd, arms spread. Our king, the great Riven Ashford, has fallen for a woman who can't even shift, who has no power, no rank, no worth, and he's willing to destroy everything to keep her. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Some nodded, others looked uncertain. Arden's chest tightened. She wanted to run, wanted to disappear, but her feet wouldn't move. Riven's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Her worth isn't determined by her wolf. It's determined by who she is, and she's worth more than every single one of you combined. The hall erupted. Some cheered, most didn't. Dorian's smile widened. You're willing to bet the kingdom on that? I'm willing to bet everything. Then prove it. Dorian's eyes glittered. Take her as your mate, publicly. Bind yourself to her in front of the entire realm. Let's see how long the kingdom tolerates a wolfless queen. The crowd went silent. Arden's breath stopped. Riven didn't flinch. Done. The word echoed through the hall like a thunderclap. Dorian's smile faltered. You're serious. Completely. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret, Riven said quietly, is not doing it sooner. He turned, his eyes finding Arden in the crowd. And without hesitation, he crossed the room and took her hand. The hall erupted again, louder this time, angrier. But Riven didn't let go. He pulled her close, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Are you with me? Arden's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break. Yes. Then trust me. And she did. But the kingdom didn't. Over the next few days, the backlash was brutal. Wolves from across the realm arrived at the estate, demanding an audience with the king, demanding answers. How could he bind himself to someone so weak? How could he dishonor the crown like this? Arden heard it all. The insults, the accusations, the threats. Some said she'd bewitched him. Others said she was a spy, planted by enemies to weaken the kingdom from within. A few even suggested she should be exiled, or worse. Riven weathered it all with the same cold, unshakable calm, but Arden could see the strain in his eyes, the weight of it pressing down on him. You don't have to do this, she told him one night. They were alone in his chambers, the fire crackling low in the hearth. You could still walk away. I'm not walking away. Riven, I said no. His voice was firm, but not unkind. He pulled her into his arms, resting his chin on top of her head. You're not a burden, Arden. You're the only thing keeping me sane. She closed her eyes, breathing him in. What if they're right? What if I'm not strong enough for this? You're stronger than all of them. He pulled back, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. And when the time comes, you'll prove it. How? Riven's jaw tightened. I don't know yet, but I believe in you. Arden wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that love could be enough. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be. The attack came on the 7th day. Arden was walking along the river path, trying to clear her head, when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. 3 wolves stood there, 2 men and a woman, all unfamiliar. Their eyes were cold, predatory. You shouldn't be out here alone, one of the men said. Arden's pulse kicked up. I'm fine. No, you're not. The woman stepped forward, her smile sharp. You're a mistake, a stain on this kingdom, and we're here to fix that. Arden took a step back. Riven's not here. The man lunged. Arden ran. She didn't think, didn't plan. She just bolted, feet pounding against the dirt path, heart hammering in her chest. But they were faster. One of them caught her arm, yanking her back. She screamed, kicking out, but another grabbed her from behind, locking her arms. Let me go. Shut up, the woman hissed. They dragged her toward the river. Arden thrashed, tried to break free, but they were too strong. Her boots scraped against the rocks as they hauled her to the water's edge. This is for the kingdom, one of them said. And then they threw her in. The current hit her like a fist, cold, fast, unforgiving. Arden gasped, water flooding her lungs, and went under. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The river dragged her down, spinning her, slamming her against rocks. Pain exploded in her ribs, her shoulder, her head. She tried to surface, but the current was too strong. This is it, she thought. This is how I die. And then something else. A pull, deep in her chest, like a thread being yanked tight. She felt it before she understood it. Riven. He was coming. Oh. Riven felt the bond snap the moment she hit the water. He was in the war room, reviewing maps with his commanders, when the pain tore through him, sharp, visceral, terrifying. Arden. He didn't think, didn't explain. He just ran. The river was half a mile away, but he covered the distance in minutes, his wolf screaming beneath his skin. When he reached the bank, he saw them. 3 wolves standing at the edge, watching the water. Riven didn't ask questions. He shifted mid-stride, his wolf tearing free, and slammed into the first one before they even saw him coming. The man went down hard, blood spraying. The others tried to run, but Riven was faster. He tore through them with brutal efficiency, rage making him reckless, vicious. By the time he was done, all three were on the ground, bleeding, barely conscious. But he didn't care about them. He dove into the river. The current was merciless, dragging him under, but Riven fought it. He searched the water, eyes burning, lungs screaming, and then, there. A flash of dark hair, pale skin. He grabbed her, hauling her against his chest, and kicked toward the surface. They broke through together, gasping, choking. Riven dragged her to the shore, laid her on the rocks, and pressed his hands to her chest. Arden! Arden! She coughed, water spilling from her mouth, and sucked in a shuddering breath. Riven's hands were shaking. Stay with me. Come on. Her eyes fluttered open. She looked at him, really looked at him, and something in her expression cracked. It was you, she whispered. What? The kiss. In the garden. I thought it was Dorian, but it was you. It was always you. Riven's throat tightened. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because you deserved to choose. His voice broke. And I didn't want to take that from you. Arden's hand found his, cold and trembling. I choose you. Riven pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly he thought he might break her. But she didn't pull away. She just clung to him, shaking, alive. I'm not letting you go, he said. Not ever. I know. But even as she said it, Arden knew the fight wasn't over, because Dorian wasn't done. When they returned to the estate, word had already spread. The three wolves who'd attacked her were gone, dragged off by Riven's guards, bloody and broken. But the damage was done. Everyone knew what had happened. Everyone knew Arden had been targeted, and everyone was waiting to see what Riven would do. He didn't keep them waiting long. That night, he called a gathering in the Great Hall. Every wolf in the estate was present, packed shoulder to shoulder, eyes fixed on the raised platform where Riven stood. Arden stood beside him, still shaking from the cold, her clothes damp and torn. She wanted to hide, wanted to run. But Riven's hand found hers, and she stayed. 3 of your own tried to kill her tonight, Riven said, his voice carrying across the hall. They dragged her to the river and left her to drown, because they believed she wasn't worthy, because they thought her life was worth less than their pride. Silence. I'm here to tell you, Riven continued, that you're wrong, all of you. Arden Vale is worth more than any wolf in this room, and if you can't see that, then you're blind. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some looked ashamed. Others looked furious. Dorian stood near the back, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. I'm claiming her, Riven said, publicly, officially, as my mate, as your queen. The hall erupted. She's wolfless. She'll weaken the bloodline. She's not fit to stand beside a king. Riven's voice cut through the chaos like a whip. Then challenge me. The hall went silent. Anyone who thinks they're stronger than me, Riven said, his eyes blazing. Anyone who thinks they can do better, step forward. Prove it. No one moved. Riven's gaze swept across the crowd, daring them. That's what I thought. He turned to Arden, his expression softening. Kneel. Her breath caught. What? Trust me. Arden's knees buckled, and she sank to the ground in front of him. Riven placed his hand on her head, his voice steady and clear. I, Riven Ashford, king of this realm, claim Arden Vale as my mate, my equal, my queen, and I bind myself to her before all of you. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. And then, something happened. A pulse of energy shot through Arden's chest, so powerful it knocked the breath from her lungs. She gasped, doubling over, and felt something inside her break. Not break, awaken. Heat flooded her veins, her skin prickled, her bones ached. And then she shifted. The transformation was violent, uncontrolled. Her body twisted, reshaped, and when she opened her eyes, the world looked different, sharper, clearer. She looked down at herself and saw white fur, massive paws, a body built for power. The hall was silent. Arden's wolf rose to its feet, towering over the crowd. She was huge, bigger than any wolf she'd ever seen, and her fur wasn't just white. It shimmered, almost glowing in the firelight. Riven stared at her, his expression somewhere between awe and disbelief. And then, from the back of the hall, Dorian laughed. "Well," he said, his voice echoing through the silence, "this just got interesting." Arden's wolf turned toward him, lips pulling back in a snarl. Dorian's smile didn't waver. "Let's see if she can survive what comes next." Arden's wolf didn't know how to shift back. She stood in the center of the great hall, massive and shaking, white fur bristling as hundreds of eyes bore into her. The power coursing through her veins felt foreign, overwhelming, like wearing someone else's skin. Her heart hammered against her ribs, or whatever wolves had instead of ribs, and panic clawed at the edges of her mind. "How do I turn back? How do I—" Riven's hand touched her flank, steady and warm. "Breathe," he said quietly, his voice cutting through the chaos in her head. "Just breathe." She tried, focused on the rhythm of her breathing, on the feeling of his hand against her fur, and slowly, painfully, the shift reversed. Her bones cracked, her muscles twisted. She collapsed onto the cold stone floor, gasping, human again, naked and trembling. Someone threw a cloak over her shoulders. She pulled it tight around herself, too disoriented to even feel ashamed. The hall was still silent. Riven crouched beside her, his hand on her back. "You're okay. I've got you." Arden nodded, throat too tight to speak. Her whole body ached like she'd been torn apart and put back together wrong. "She shifted." The voice came from somewhere in the crowd, hushed and disbelieving. "She actually shifted." "That's impossible. She's been wolfless for years." "Did you see the size of her wolf? And the color? She's not normal. That's not a normal shift." The murmurs spread like wildfire. Arden could feel the weight of their stares, the shock and fear and confusion all tangled together. She forced herself to stand, legs shaking, and met their eyes. Let them stare, let them wonder. She wasn't hiding anymore. Riven rose beside her, his presence a wall of strength at her back. "The ceremony is complete," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. "Arden Vale is my mate, your queen, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." No one spoke. Dorian pushed through the crowd, his expression unreadable. He stopped a few feet away, eyes locked on Arden. "Well," he said slowly, "I didn't see that coming." "No," Riven said coldly. "You didn't." Dorian's gaze flicked to his brother, then back to Arden. Something dark flickered across his face, anger maybe, or jealousy, but his smile stayed in place. "Congratulations. Looks like you're not as worthless as everyone thought." Arden's hands curled into fists beneath the cloak. "Go to hell, Dorian." His smile widened. "Already there, sweetheart." Riven stepped forward, putting himself between them. "You're done here." "Am I?" Dorian tilted his head. "Because it seems to me like things are just getting started." "Walk away. Now." For a moment, Dorian didn't move. The tension between the two brothers was thick enough to choke on. Then, with a careless shrug, Dorian turned and walked toward the door. But before he left, he glanced back over his shoulder. "Enjoy your victory, brother. It won't last." The door slammed shut behind him. Arden's breath came out in a rush. She sagged against Riven, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. "Come on," Riven said softly. "Let's get you out of here." Riven's chambers were quiet, warm, a world away from the chaos of the great hall. Arden sat by the fire, wrapped in a thick blanket, staring into the flames. Her body still ached, but the worst of the pain had faded to a dull throb. Riven moved around the room, pouring water, checking the locks on the doors. He was trying to stay calm, trying to act like everything was fine. But Arden could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw stayed tight. "You're angry," she said. "I'm furious." He set the water down harder than necessary. "They tried to kill you. And Dorian—" He broke off, shaking his head. "I should have seen it coming. You couldn't have known." "I should have." Riven turned to face her, his eyes dark with guilt. "I should have protected you better." "You saved my life." "Barely," his voice cracked. "If I'd been even a minute later. But you weren't." Arden stood, letting the blanket fall, and crossed to him. "You pulled me out of that river. You brought me back. And then you claim me in front of the entire kingdom, even though you knew they'd hate you for it. Riven's hands found her waist, pulling her close. I'd do it again, 1,000 times. I know. She rested her forehead against his chest. But we need to talk about what happens next. What do you mean? I shifted, Riven. After years of being wolfless, She pulled back, meeting his eyes. How is that even possible? I don't know. His brow furrowed. But I have a theory. Which is? The bond. His hands tightened on her waist. When I claimed you, it triggered something. Unlocked something inside you that was always there. Arden's chest tightened. You think I was never really wolfless? I think you were dormant, waiting. For what? For someone to see you. His voice was soft, almost reverent. For someone to choose you. The words hit her harder than they should have. Arden's throat tightened, and she blinked back tears. That doesn't make sense. It's the only thing that does. Riven cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek. You were always strong, Arden. You just needed someone to remind you. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that love could be that powerful, but a small, bitter part of her whispered that it was too easy, that nothing in her life had ever been that simple. What if they reject me anyway? She asked quietly. What if they never accept me as queen? Then we'll deal with it. Riven's eyes were steady, unflinching. Together. Arden nodded, even though the fear didn't go away, because deep down she knew the real fight was just beginning. What? The next morning, Arden woke to find Mira sitting at the foot of her bed. She bolted upright, heart racing. How did you get in here? Riven let me in. Mira's expression was grim. We need to talk. Arden rubbed her eyes, still groggy. About what? About the fact that half the kingdom wants you dead, and the other half thinks you're some kind of miracle. Mira leaned forward. You shifted, Arden. After 23 years of being wolfless, you suddenly have the biggest, most powerful wolf anyone's ever seen. People are scared. And scared people do stupid things. I didn't ask for this. I know, but it doesn't matter. Mira's voice softened. You're a threat now to Dorian, to anyone who thought they could control Riven, and they're going to come for you. Arden's stomach twisted. What do you want me to do? Fight back. Mira's eyes were fierce. You've spent your whole life letting people walk over you. Don't start now. I don't know how to fight. Then learn. Mira stood. Because if you don't, they'll tear you apart. Training started that afternoon. Riven had arranged for one of his best warriors, a woman named Kira, with scars on her arms and a no-nonsense attitude, to teach Arden the basics. They met in a private courtyard behind the estate, away from prying eyes. You ever throw a punch before? Kira asked. Arden shook her head. Figures. Kira sighed. All right. Let's start simple. Show me your stance. Arden tried to mimic the position Kira demonstrated, but it felt awkward, unnatural. Kira circled her, arms crossed. You're too stiff. Relax your shoulders. Bend your knees. You're not a statue. Arden adjusted, but it still didn't feel right. Better. Kira stopped in front of her. Now hit me. What? Hit me. Right here. Kira tapped her shoulder. Don't hold back. Arden hesitated, then threw a punch. It was weak, clumsy. Kira didn't even flinch. Pathetic, Kira said flatly. Again. Arden tried again, and again, and again. By the time the sun started to set, her knuckles were raw, her arms ached, and she was covered in bruises. But she'd landed a few solid hits, not many, but enough. Kira handed her a water skin. You're not hopeless. Thanks, Arden muttered, too tired to sound sarcastic. But you've got a long way to go. Kira's expression softened slightly. The wolf inside you, she's strong, powerful, but you need to learn how to control her, because if you don't, she'll control you. Arden nodded, chest tight. She could still feel it, the wolf, lurking just beneath her skin. Waiting, watching, it scared her more than she wanted to admit. That night, Riven found her on the balcony outside his chambers, staring out at the darkened landscape. You should be resting, he said. Can't sleep. He came to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Kira says you did well today. Kira's a liar. Riven's lips twitched. She doesn't lie. She's just blunt. She called me pathetic. She calls everyone pathetic. He turned to face her. But she wouldn't waste her time training you if she didn't think you were worth it. Arden looked up at him, searching his face. Do you really think I can do this? I know you can. How? Because I've watched you survive in a place that wanted you gone. Riven's voice was quiet, intense. I've watched you endure things that would have broken anyone else. And you're still here, still standing, still fighting. Arden's throat tightened. I don't feel strong. You don't have to feel it for it to be true. He pulled her into his arms, resting his chin on top of her head. You're stronger than you think, Arden, and one day you'll see it too. She closed her eyes, breathing him in, and let herself believe just for a moment that he was right. The attack came 3 days later. Arden was in the library searching for a book on wolf history when she heard the crash. She spun around. The door hung open, splintered at the hinges. And standing in the doorway was Dorian, her pulse spiked. What are you doing here? We need to talk. Dorian stepped inside, closing what was left of the door behind him. Alone. I don't have anything to say to you. Maybe not, but I have plenty to say to you. He crossed the room slowly, his movements predatory. You think you've won, don't you? Arden's hands curled into fists. I think you're a coward. Dorian's smile didn't reach his eyes. Careful, Arden. You're not invincible just because you shifted. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze cold and calculating. You've made Riven weak, distracted, and that makes you a liability. Riven's stronger than you'll ever be. Maybe, but he's not thinking clearly. Not anymore. Dorian leaned in, his voice dropping. He'd burn the entire kingdom to the ground for you, and that's a problem. Arden's chest tightened. If you hurt him, I'm not going to hurt him. Dorian's smile widened. I'm going to hurt you. Before she could react, he lunged. Arden barely had time to dodge. His hand caught her arm, yanking her back, and she stumbled. Panic flooded her veins, but so did something else. Heat, fury, power. Her wolf surged to the surface. The shift happened fast this time, more controlled. One moment she was human, the next she was towering over Dorian, teeth bared, a growl rumbling in her chest. Dorian's eyes widened. He took a step back. You really think you can fight me? Arden's wolf snarled. Dorian shifted too. His wolf was lean, golden, built for speed. He circled her, looking for an opening. Arden didn't wait. She lunged. They collided in a tangle of fur and teeth and claws. Arden was bigger, stronger, but Dorian was faster. He twisted out of her grip, raking his claws across her shoulder. Pain flared, bright and sharp. She snapped at him, teeth catching the edge of his ear. He yelped, pulling back, blood dripping onto the library floor. They circled each other again, both breathing hard. And then the door burst open. Riven stood in the doorway, his eyes blazing, his wolf already halfway to the surface. He took one look at the scene, Arden's bloodied shoulder, Dorian's torn ear, and lost it. He shifted mid-stride, slamming into Dorian with enough force to crack the stone floor. The two brothers went down in a snarling, vicious heap. Riven, stop! Arden tried to shift back, but the pain in her shoulder made her stumble. Riven didn't stop. He pinned Dorian to the ground, jaws locked around his throat, growling low and dangerous. Dorian went still, submitted. Riven held him there for a long moment, teeth still pressed against skin. Then slowly, he let go. Dorian scrambled back, shifting human again, blood streaking down his neck. His eyes were wide, wild, furious. Riven shifted too, breathing hard. His hands still curled into fists. You ever touch her again, he said, his voice deadly quiet. And I will kill you, brother or not. Dorian didn't answer. He just stared at Riven, something broken and bitter twisting his expression. Then he turned and walked out. Riven crossed to Arden immediately, his hands gentle despite the violence still thrumming through him. Are you hurt? I'm fine, she lied, wincing as he touched her shoulder. You're bleeding. It's not that bad. Arden? I'm fine. Her voice came out sharper than she meant it to. She took a breath, trying to steady herself. He came here to scare me, to prove I'm weak, and I fought back. Riven's jaw tightened. You shouldn't have had to. But I did. and I held my own. She met his eyes, something fierce sparking in her chest. I'm not helpless, Riven. Not anymore. He stared at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression. Pride, maybe. Or respect. No, he said quietly. You're not. Word of the fight spread fast. By the next morning, everyone knew. Arden had faced Dorian. Arden had fought back. Arden had drawn blood. The whispers changed after that. Not all of them, but enough. She's stronger than she looks. Did you hear? She held her own against the prince. Maybe the king knew what he was doing after all. Arden felt the shift in the air. The way people looked at her now, not with pity or contempt, but with something closer to wariness, maybe even respect. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Mira cornered her that afternoon in the courtyard, grinning. I heard you kicked Dorian's ass. Arden's lips twitched. I wouldn't say that. Close enough? Mira clapped her on the shoulder, the uninjured one. People are talking, Arden, in a good way for once. I don't care what people think. Yes, you do, and that's not a bad thing. Mira's expression softened. Just don't let it go to your head. You've still got enemies. Dorian's not done. I know. Good. Mira squeezed her arm. Because next time, you might not have Riven there to save you. Arden nodded, throat tight. She knew Mira was right. Dorian wasn't the type to give up. And whatever he was planning, it wasn't over. But for the first time in her life, Arden felt ready. The council meeting was scheduled for the following week, and the tension leading up to it was suffocating. Wolves from across the kingdom had gathered to voice their opinions on Riven's decision to take Arden as his mate. Some supported him, most didn't. Arden sat beside Riven at the head of the long council table, her hands folded in her lap, trying to look calm even though her heart was racing. The council members filed in one by one, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. Dorian was there too, sitting near the far end of the table, his face carefully neutral. Riven called the meeting to order. You all know why we're here, he said. Some of you have concerns about my choice of mate. I'm giving you the chance to voice them now. The room erupted. She's wolfless. She was wolfless, someone corrected, but she shifted. We all saw it. That doesn't mean she's fit to be queen. She's an outsider. She has no rank, no bloodline. She fought Dorian and drew blood. That counts for something. It counts for nothing if she can't lead. Riven slammed his hand on the table, silencing them. Enough. The room went quiet. You want to question her strength? Riven's voice was ice. Fine. Test her. Put her through the trials. Let her prove herself the same way every other wolf in this kingdom has. Arden's breath caught. The trials. She'd heard of them. Brutal, dangerous tests of strength and endurance that every ranking wolf had to pass. Most didn't survive. You can't be serious, one of the council members said. I'm completely serious. Riven looked at Arden, his expression unreadable. If she passes, you accept her. No more questions. No more doubt. The council exchanged glances. And if she fails, someone asked. She won't, Riven said. But Arden could hear the fear beneath his words, because they both knew the truth. If she failed, she'd die. Arden stood in the center of the arena 3 days later, surrounded by hundreds of wolves. The air was thick with anticipation, the crowd restless and hungry for a spectacle. The trials were simple in concept. Survive 3 challenges: combat, endurance, strategy. Fail any of them, and you were out. Sometimes permanently. Riven stood at the edge of the arena, his face tight with tension. He'd wanted to cancel the whole thing, to tell the council to go to hell. But Arden had stopped him. I need to do this, she'd said. If I don't, they'll never respect me. Now, standing in the dirt with the sun beating down on her, she wondered if she'd made the right choice. The first opponent stepped into the ring, a massive male wolf, easily twice her size, with scars crisscrossing his chest. The crowd roared. Arden shifted, her white wolf rising to the surface, and the roar got louder. The male circled her, assessing. Then he lunged. Arden dodged, barely, and snapped at his flank. He twisted, claws raking across her side. Pain flared, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. The fight was brutal, messy. But Arden was faster than he expected, more agile. And when she finally got her jaws around his throat, the crowd went silent. She held him there, breathing hard, waiting. He submitted. Arden let go, stepping back, and the crowd erupted again. One down, two more to go. Shit. The second trial was worse. They locked her in a stone chamber and filled it with water. She had to hold her breath, find the hidden key, unlock the door, and escape before she drowned. Arden's lungs burned, her vision blurred, but she found the key, forced the lock open, and burst through the door, gasping and shaking. The crowd cheered. 2 down, 1 more. Shut it. The final trial was strategy. A maze, a series of traps, and at the center, a prize she had to retrieve. Simple. Except the maze was designed to kill. Arden moved carefully, her wolf senses on high alert. She avoided the spike traps, the collapsing floors, the hidden blades, and when she finally reached the center and grabbed the prize, a small silver token, she felt something shift. Not in the maze, in herself. She'd done it, she'd survived. When she emerged from the maze, bloodied and exhausted but alive, the crowd didn't just cheer, they roared. And for the first time, Arden saw something in their eyes that wasn't contempt or pity. It was respect. Riven was there the moment she stepped out of the arena, pulling her into his arms, his hands shaking. "You did it," he whispered. "You actually did it." Arden nodded, too tired to speak, but she didn't need to, because the kingdom had seen her fight, seen her survive, and now they knew. She wasn't just Riven's mate, she was their queen. The coronation was set for the next full moon. 3 weeks. That's all Arden had to prepare for the moment that would either cement her place in the kingdom or destroy her completely. The trials had earned her respect, but respect wasn't the same as acceptance. She could feel it in the way people still whispered when she passed, in the careful distance they maintained, in the tightness around Riven's mouth whenever the council convened. They'd agreed to crown her, but they hadn't agreed to trust her. Arden spent those weeks training with Kira, learning to control her wolf, to fight with strategy instead of just instinct. Her body grew stronger, leaner, covered in bruises that faded faster now that her wolf was awake. But it was the mental training that hurt more. Learning to lead, to make decisions that affected hundreds of lives, to carry the weight of a crown she'd never asked for. "You're overthinking it," Kira said one afternoon, watching Arden pace the training yard. "A queen doesn't need to know everything. She just needs to know who to trust. And if I trust the wrong person, then you deal with the consequences." Kira's expression was flat, unforgiving. "Same as everyone else." Arden stopped pacing. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. It's just not easy." Kira tossed her a water skin. "The real question is whether you're ready to accept that." Arden caught it, her hands steadier than they'd been weeks ago. "I don't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice." Kira's gaze was sharp. "You could walk away, leave the kingdom, start over somewhere no one knows your name." "Riven would survive." Kira's voice softened slightly. "He survived worse. The question is whether you can survive staying." Arden stared at her, throat tight. Because Kira was right. She could leave, she could run, but she wouldn't. Not because she was brave, not because she was strong, but because she was tired of being invisible. And if she had to fight for her place in this world, then she'd fight. Dorian stayed away after the trials. At first, Arden thought it was over, that he'd finally accepted defeat and moved on. But Mira knew better. "He's planning something," she said one evening, her voice low and urgent. They were in Arden's chambers. Her chambers now, not the tiny servant's room she'd grown up in. The space still felt too big, too unfamiliar. "He's been meeting with wolves from the outer territories. Ones who weren't at the trials. Ones who still think you're a threat." Arden's stomach twisted. "What kind of meetings?" "The quiet kind. The dangerous kind." Mira's eyes were dark with worry. "He's trying to build support. Convince people that Riven's lost his mind. That you've corrupted him somehow." "That's insane." "Doesn't matter if it's true. Matters if people believe it." Mira leaned forward. "You need to be careful, Arden. The coronation is going to be his last chance to stop this, and I don't think he's going to let it pass." Arden nodded, her chest tight with a fear she couldn't name. Because deep down, she knew Mira was right. Dorian wasn't done. He was just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The night before the coronation, Riven found Arden on the balcony outside their chambers, staring out at the moonlit landscape. "You should be sleeping," he said. "Can't." He came to stand beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. "Nervous?" "Terrified." Riven's lips twitched. "Good. You should be." Arden shot him a look. "That's not helpful." "I'm not trying to be helpful. I'm trying to be honest." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "Tomorrow, you're going to stand in front of the entire kingdom and let them crown you. And some of them are going to hate you for it. Some are going to challenge you. Some are going to wait for you to fail so they can say they were right all along." Arden's throat tightened. "You're really bad at pep talks." "I'm not done." Riven's hand found hers, his fingers lacing through hers. "But some of them, more than you think, are going to see you for what you are. Strong, brave, real. And they're going to follow you, not because you're my mate, not because you passed the trials, but because you're you." Arden's eyes burned. "What if I can't do this?" "Then we'll figure it out together." His voice was steady, certain. "But I don't think that's going to happen, because you've already proven you can survive anything this kingdom throws at you." "Surviving isn't the same as leading." "No, but it's a start." Riven pulled her into his arms, resting his chin on top of her head. "And that's all anyone can ask for." Arden closed her eyes, breathing him in, and let herself believe just for tonight that he was right. The coronation was held in the Great Hall, but the crowd spilled out into the courtyard, the gardens, the entire estate. Wolves from across the kingdom had come to witness the moment, some out of loyalty, some out of curiosity, and some, Arden suspected, just to see if she'd fail. She stood in the antechamber, dressed in a gown the color of moonlight, her hands shaking despite her best efforts to stay calm. Mira fussed with the fabric, adjusting the way it fell across Arden's shoulders. "You look like a queen," Mira said quietly. "I feel like I'm going to throw up." "That's normal." Mira squeezed her hand. "Just breathe. You've got this." Arden nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The doors opened. The crowd roared. Riven was waiting for her at the end of the long aisle, standing on the raised platform where the throne sat. He wore black, simple and elegant, and when his eyes met hers, something in his expression softened. Arden forced herself to move. One step, then another. The crowd's noise faded to a dull hum as she walked, her focus narrowing to Riven, to the throne, to the moment that was about to change everything. She reached the platform. Riven took her hand, his grip steady and warm, and guided her to the center. The high priest stepped forward, an ancient wolf with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. He raised his hands, and the hall fell silent. "We are gathered here," the priest began, his voice carrying across the space, "to witness the crowning of Arden Vale, mate to King Riven Ashford, as queen of this realm." A murmur rippled through the crowd, some approving, some not. The priest continued, unfazed. "By the old laws and the new, by blood and bond, she has proven herself worthy. She has passed the trials. She has earned her place." He turned to Arden, holding out a silver crown, delicate, intricate, beautiful. "Do you accept this responsibility? Do you swear to protect this kingdom, to lead with strength and wisdom, to stand beside your king in times of peace and war?" Arden's throat was dry. She looked at Riven, and he nodded, just barely. "I do," she said, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. The priest placed the crown on her head. The weight of it was immediate, grounding, and for a moment Arden felt like she might collapse under it. But then Riven's hand found hers again, and she stood. The priest raised his voice. "I present to you Arden Vale, Queen of—" "Stop!" The word cut through the hall like a blade. Arden's head snapped toward the sound. Dorian stood at the edge of the crowd, his expression cold and furious. "This is a mistake." The hall erupted. Shouts, gasps, confusion. Riven's hand tightened on Arden's. "Dorian, don't—" "She's not fit to be queen." Dorian's voice rose above the chaos. "She's wolfless." "She shifted," someone shouted back. "We all saw it." "That doesn't prove anything." Dorian stepped forward, his eyes locked on Arden. "For all we know, it was a fluke, a trick. She could lose it tomorrow and go back to being nothing. Arden's chest tightened. The crown on her head suddenly felt like a noose. "You're wrong," Riven said, his voice deadly quiet. "Am I?" Dorian's smile was sharp, vicious. "Then let her prove it. Let her shift now, in front of everyone. Show us that she's not just pretending to be something she's not." The crowd went silent. Arden's pulse pounded in her ears. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, waiting, judging. Riven turned to her, his expression pained. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Arden's voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. "If I don't, they'll never believe me." She stepped forward, away from Riven, away from the safety of the throne. She faced the crowd, her chin held high. "You want proof?" she said, her voice carrying across the hall. "Fine. I'll give it to you." She closed her eyes, reaching for the wolf inside her, and nothing happened. Panic clawed at her chest. She pushed harder, tried to force the shift, but the wolf stayed silent, dormant. "No, not now, please, not now." The crowd started to murmur. Dorian's smile widened. "She can't do it," someone whispered. "I told you. She's a fraud." Arden's breath came in short, shallow gasps. She could feel the crown slipping, feel everything she'd fought for crumbling around her. And then Riven was there, his hand on her shoulder, his voice low and urgent. "Stop trying to force it." "I can't." "Yes, you can." His eyes held hers, fierce and steady. "But not like this. Not because they demand it. You shift when you decide, not them." Arden's throat tightened. "They'll never accept me if I don't." "Then they're fools." Riven's voice was raw, desperate. "But you don't owe them anything, Arden. You don't owe them proof. You don't owe them your power. You are enough just as you are." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. You are enough just as you are. No one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever looked at her and seen worth beyond what she could do, what she could prove, what she could offer. And in that moment, something inside Arden broke open. Not her wolf. Her. The shift came like an explosion. Power surged through her veins, so intense it knocked the breath from her lungs. Her body twisted, reshaped, and when she opened her eyes, the world looked different, sharper, clearer, real. Her wolf rose to its full height, towering over the crowd. White fur shimmered in the firelight, almost glowing. And when she threw her head back and howled, the sound shook the rafters. The hall went silent, and then light. It started at her chest, a soft glow that spread outward, covering her fur, her paws, her entire body. The crowd gasped, stepping back, shielding their eyes. Arden could feel it, the power, the energy, something ancient and wild and impossible. It wasn't just strength, it was something more, something she didn't understand but couldn't deny. When the light finally faded, she stood in the center of the hall, still shifted, still glowing faintly. The crowd was on their knees, all of them, even Dorian. Arden shifted back slowly, her body trembling with exhaustion. The crown had fallen during the transformation, but someone, Riven, picked it up and placed it back on her head. He was smiling, not the careful, controlled smile he wore in public, but something real, raw, and full of pride. "Still think she's not fit to be queen?" he asked, his voice carrying across the hall. No one answered, because there was nothing left to say. The celebration lasted 3 days. Wolves from across the kingdom came to pledge their loyalty, to offer gifts, to bow before their new queen. Arden accepted it all with as much grace as she could muster, though the attention still felt surreal, overwhelming. But the whispers had changed. No one called her weak anymore. No one questioned her place. They called her the White Wolf, the glowing queen, the impossible. And for the first time in her life, Arden felt like she belonged. Dorian left the kingdom 2 days after the coronation. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. Riven didn't seem surprised. "He'll come back," he said when Arden asked about it. "Eventually, but not for a while." "Are you worried?" "About Dorian?" Riven's expression was unreadable. "Always. But not today." Arden nodded, letting it go. Because today, she had other things to think about. The council meeting was smaller this time. Just Riven, Arden, and the 5 high-ranking wolves who advised the throne. They sat around the long table, discussing trade routes and border patrols and a dozen other things Arden was still learning. But halfway through, one of the council members, an older woman named Alara, cleared her throat. "There's something we need to address," Alara said, her tone careful. Arden's stomach tightened. "What is it?" "Your transformation." Alara hesitated. "The light, the power. We've never seen anything like it." "Neither have I," Arden admitted. "We've been searching the records," another council member said, "looking for any mention of wolves like you, and we found something." Arden's pulse quickened. "What?" Alara slid a book across the table, old, leather-bound, the pages yellowed with age. "This is a chronicle from the First Kingdom, before the current royal line, before the wars." Arden opened the book carefully, scanning the faded text. "There's a legend," Alara continued, "about a line of wolves called the Lumina. They were rare, powerful, born with the ability to channel light, to heal, to protect. But they were hunted, killed, because people feared what they didn't understand." Arden's hands shook. "We think you might be descended from them," Alara said quietly, "which would explain why your wolf was dormant for so long. The Lumina bloodline only awakens under extreme circumstances, when it's needed most." Arden looked at Riven, her chest tight. "Did you know about this?" "No." His voice was steady, but she could see the shock in his eyes. "But it makes sense." "It also makes you incredibly valuable," Alara said, "and incredibly dangerous. If word spreads that Illumina has returned, there will be wolves from across the realm who want to claim you, use you, or kill you." Arden's stomach twisted. "What do I do?" "You lead," Riven said, his voice firm. "You protect this kingdom, and you don't let anyone, take your power from you." Arden nodded, even though the fear didn't go away, because she knew the truth now. She wasn't just a queen, she was something more, and that meant the fight was far from over. 3 months later, Arden stood on the balcony outside the royal chambers, watching the sun set over the kingdom. The estate was quiet tonight, peaceful, the kind of quiet she'd never thought she'd experience here. Riven came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything." Arden leaned back against him. "How different things are now. Good different or bad different?" "Both." She turned in his arms, meeting his eyes. "I still don't feel like I belong here sometimes, like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not." "You're not pretending." Riven's hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "You're exactly who you're supposed to be." "Illumina? A queen." His voice was soft, reverent. "My queen." Arden's throat tightened. "I couldn't have done this without you." "Yes, you could have." Riven's smile was small, sad, "but I'm glad you didn't have to." He kissed her then, slow, deep, full of everything they'd been through and everything still to come. When they finally pulled apart, Arden rested her forehead against his, her eyes closed. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Riven said, "we build something better, together." And for the first time in her life, Arden believed it. But the kingdom still had its problems. There were still wolves who didn't trust her, who questioned her, who waited for her to fail. But Arden didn't run from them anymore. She faced them head on, made decisions that were hard, that cost her sleep, that left her questioning herself late into the night. But she made them. Because she was done being invisible, done waiting for someone else to see her worth. She'd found it herself, and that made all the difference. 1 year after the coronation, Arden stood in the same great hall where she'd been crowned. But this time, she wasn't the one being honored. Kira knelt before her, head bowed, as Arden placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've proven yourself a loyal warrior and a trusted advisor," Arden said, her voice carrying across the hall. "And I'm honored to name you captain of the Royal Guard." Kira stood, her expression carefully neutral, but Arden saw the pride in her eyes. The crowd cheered, and Arden smiled. Because this, building something, lifting others up, creating a kingdom where strength wasn't the only thing that mattered. This was what being a queen meant. Not perfection, not power, just showing up every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Bumped. That night, as Arden lay in bed beside Riven, his arm draped over her waist, she thought about the girl she used to be, the one who'd been invisible, overlooked, wolfless. And she realized something. That girl was still here, still part of her. But she wasn't the whole story anymore, because Arden had learned something in the past year, something she wished she'd known sooner. You don't need someone else to see your worth for it to exist. You just need to see it yourself. And once you do, nothing, not the whispers, not the doubt, not the fear, can take it away. Riven stirred beside her, pulling her closer. You still awake? Yeah. What are you thinking about? Arden smiled, her eyes drifting to the window where moonlight spilled across the floor. How far we've come. We've still got a long way to go. I know. She turned in his arms, meeting his eyes. But I'm not scared anymore. No? No? Her voice was steady, certain, because I finally figured it out. Figured what out? That I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to be fearless. I don't need to have all the answers. Arden's hand found his, their fingers lacing together. I just need to keep showing up, keep fighting, keep choosing myself. Riven's expression softened. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. I didn't teach you that. No. Arden's smile widened. I taught myself. And in that moment, she realized something else. The girl who'd been thrown into the river and left to drown, she'd died that day. But the woman who'd clawed her way back to shore, she was just getting started. But the kingdom wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, still enemies lurking in the shadows, waiting for their moment. But Arden wasn't afraid anymore, because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. You don't survive by being the strongest. You survive by refusing to give up, by choosing yourself, even when the world tells you you're not enough, by loving fiercely, fighting harder, and standing tall even when everything inside you screams to run. And as Arden drifted off to sleep that night, wrapped in Riven's arms, the moon casting silver light across their faces, she knew one thing for certain. She'd been invisible once, but never again, because the girl no one chose had finally chosen herself, and that made her unstoppable.